Hello. So I'm in a slightly different location today in Dumfries and Galloway, visiting my family. Just want to speak a little bit about Aleppo and Syria and the implications of a media war. The sound quality seems to be on a slight rebound, so hopefully it will be audible. I've tested it myself and I can hear it okay. So the thing is, when I test the video, what I hear is what gets broadcast on the channel, so I can hear it okay for now, so hopefully it will be okay. Yeah, so I was watching, I believe it was France 24 report on Aleppo. The government forces have reclaimed that city, and it's it's being seen as a big victory for the Assad regime, which of course it is. Aleppo is a major stronghold. It's an ancient city. It's Syria's most populous city. It is tragic to see what war can do to a place. 4.5, 5 years of war, coming up to 6 years now, in fact. Um, what it can do to a city is devastating. Aleppo had apparently one of the most famous mosques in the Middle East. The city now just looks like it just looks like a complete shell of itself, and that's an utter tragedy. It's like Sarajevo and Grozny rolled into one. Plus an earthquake zone thrown in on top of that. That's what it looks like. Um, I came across a post by a Chinese contact of mine, not really a close friend, just an acquaintance, and he was sort of celebrating the reclaim of Aleppo from government forces, by government forces, I should say. That doesn't particularly surprise me. A lot of Chinese people kind of take the Assad side in all of this. Um, I maintain that from the start of this war, there has been incredible brutality on both sides. There was one Aleppo resident, and he really summed it up. He said, I don't trust either side. The government has taken my house, and the rebels have destroyed my business. He was a hairdresser. That to me sums up the situation. Anyone that dismisses this conflict as one side is good, the other side is bad, they're just clueless, and they haven't been following the situation. I do think the main beneficiary of the propaganda war has been the Assad regime, because despite all the brutality they showed, especially early in the war, the brutality of ISIS and various Islamist groups have definitely taken world attention more than the brutality of ISIS. I mean, the brutality of Assad. So, in a sense, the Islamists have actually done Assad a favor, in the sense that they have distracted the world from his own excesses. And make no mistake about it, this is a dictatorship that has killed its own people. And let's also get another thing clear. This war began in Syria. It didn't begin with outsiders. It began in Syria when the Assad regime decided to use brute force against protesters. Now, I'll play the devil's advocate for a second. It could be argued that when the West was naive in funding what they perceived to be moderate rebels, and at some point that those arms then got into the hands of Islamists. So the perception then is, oh well, the West funds Islamists. And probably some of that is true. Certainly, our cozy relations with Saudi Arabia is something that you know I'm greatly uneasy about. But when I see people portraying Russia and Iran and the Assad regime as the good guys, I frankly find it insufferable, because all three countries, well, Russia, Iran, and the Assad government, are guilty of committing atrocities against the Syrian people. This is irrefutable. It is a simple fact that the Assad government has used a policy of collective punishment. That is to say, where the rebels have taken an area, the Assad regime has seen everyone as one and the same. And from the very start of this war, the Assad regime has described any Syrian who opposes him as a terrorist. In other words, Syrians at the start of the conflict who were unhappy about human rights abuses and corruption and all the other charming things that come with dictatorships. Assad has managed to convince a lot of people that those men, women, and children are terrorists. And unfortunately, because there absolutely are terrorists on the ground, and there certainly are vicious Islamist thugs fighting Assad, that has then helped Assad win the propaganda war. Now, I don't take sides in this conflict. I have no desire to see the Islamists triumph, and in some ways, I suppose Assad is the lesser of two evils, because at least he's not a religious fanatic. But this just isn't a case of being black and white. And I get so irritated when I see people portraying Russia as the great savior, Assad as simply an embattled president who's done nothing wrong. Give me a break. You know, a country like Syria, it's not Libya. It was a more comprehensive and pluralistic society than that. Um, so to simply demonize the Syrian people as being that prone to Islamism, it's absurd. It really is. In other words, those who are saying that it's just a case of a president having to fight off terrorists, well, the people he has been targeting isn't just the Al Nusra Front and ISIS and so on, who, by the way, have capitalized on the Russia China veto, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, that's my opinion, but that's what I believe. Um, so I just think that's one of the tragic aspects of this war, that history is going to be distorted, especially in Russia and China. Now, in the case of China, they're less involved than Russia is, but the Chinese always back dictatorships because it's in their vested interests, and nationalistic Chinese agree with what the government says. So they're not really critical thinkers as far as I'm concerned. Not talking about all Chinese, but I just you know it's just tragic what's happened to this country, and I'm not saying the West is innocent, far from it. But I will defend the West from outright vilification and idiots who say that it's entirely the fault of the West. That is beyond rubbish. Russia is massively culpable for what's going on in Syria. And by the way, Russia hasn't helped a single refugee. Not that Putin News will ever report that. Russia today is. I'm not going to go on and on about it because I've made this point before, but you're never ever going to see Russia today critique or question Russian foreign policy. Just won't happen. Um, So for me, obviously there's this humanitarian crisis. There's all the people who've lost their homes, their livelihoods, their lives, who've been horribly injured. But another tragedy of this war is just how much people are distorting it one way or the other. And I just hope honest historians don't portray this as black and white, because it is not black and white. Anyway, I'll leave it there for now, and I hope the sound is okay with this. Thanks for watching.